Hi, Madeleine here from Sonic Bloom with a new episode of With a Little Help from Max for Life. And this time we're going to look at the MIDI tools by Meyer, which are included in Live 12 Suite with the latest version, so Live 12.1. And you can either download it from the packs page. So if I'm going here, I can just download it, or you can also just go down to packs, scroll all the way down, and then look for the available pack under available packs and download it and install it. So let's dive right in. There's 5 MIDI tools in total. It's 3 generators and 2 transformers. We're going to look at the generators first, and the first one is phase pattern. So the way this works is it basically allows you to kind of bend time. So this will affect the note length. So here you basically can either move things here in the display, and you can see already that it's creating notes. And so basically the higher the curve, the longer the notes. And you can also adjust it here. So here would be the shape, and here it's the skewing that you can affect. So you can do it like this, or you can do it like this in this curve. But we can get more shapes basically if you use these 2 parameters. Let's play this. So, and if we adjust it, here you can see that the length at the ends is basically mirrored, and so the more curved, the longer it is. So let's turn this back down here. So here you get the bouncing ball effect, and if you turn it this way around, you get the opposite. And if we put it in the middle, it's just notes of the same length because it's linear in this case. So let's turn it this way around, and so here, and if we turn this the other way around, then you can see that the longer notes are at the end, so at the start and the end of the clip. Right now we can see there's always 8 notes generated. That has to do with the setting here. So for example, I could also turn this down and say, okay, we want, say, 4. Same goes here. Or you could go all the way up to 256, which generally will be quite a bit too much. Here you can set the duration of the notes. So you can see that basically it cuts off the ending, but it doesn't change the start time. Here you can quantize it, which may or may not make sense depending on what you want to achieve. With jitter, you can add some randomness. So basically the notes begin and start in other places. And let's take this down again. And then there's also iteration instead. So you can see that basically you can double or triple or so on and so forth the pattern, which can also be really fun. Especially if you have clips of a longer length, like right now I only have a clip length of 1 bar. Okay, so I'm gonna make this a bit longer again. Then this is just for the pattern. Now for pitch, we can have settings as well. So here this is the shape of the pitch, and this is the skewing. And then you can also turn this around. So right now you can set this, change this as well. Maybe not as low. And then you can also say how many iterations you want. So I could also just set this to 2. And then the same where you can also change the pattern here of what notes will be generated. So it's really fun to play around with, and then you also can basically change the pitch direction. So here, if this is locked, then the low and the high pitch basically stay locked, so the range stays locked for that. And then for velocity, we also have settings. Same for the skewing, works exactly the same. Right now they're the same. And then you can also create iterations again. The second generator is called Polyrhythm, and it allows you to create polymeters or polyrhythms depending on a setting here in distribution. We're going to get to this in a little bit. So here you basically get, it's like a step sequencer within the MIDI clip, and you have basically 6 patterns that you can create. These are according to the bass note that you set. So here it's C1, which means it's ideal for drum sounds in a drum rack. And this is what you will most likely use it most of the time, but it can also be used for other things. And then here, this is set in semitones, and then it's +0. So this would be C1. And so these would be basically the first 6 drum sounds in a drum rack. But also you can change this whatever you like, same with the bass note. Then this is the length of the pattern. So the maximum is determined by the algorithm. So it's only 60 for the Omni algorithm, but 64 for Euclidean. But it depends on the clip length as well and the grid resolution. Here we've got the density, so the number of notes generated. I'm going to set this to 6 because then it's easier to kind of show certain things. And so if I turn this on now, I can generate the sounds. So here this density is 6, and then it fills everything. So if I set it like this, let's start play. Right, so this is how it works. There you can set the amount of notes, and then you can also set things in variant. So basically it will move. If we use the other algorithm, so we've got the Euclidean right now, and set it to Omni instead, then you see that the pattern that is generated changes this way. Here we can set the velocity. By default it's 100, but you can also go up and down. And here you can turn the pattern on or off. The same goes for all the other patterns. So we can use different distributions here as well. So if we want to create polymeters, then hug and fill are the right settings. Fill is only available of those two when you use the Omni algorithm. If we use Euclidean, then we've got fill and hug as well. So fill fills everything, hug, you can see that makes quite a difference what you change in, what you select in. Stretch will stretch those. So you can have a completely different length. And this means that it's polyrhythms now. And then we've got fit as well. So in the fit, you see that it basically will change the clip length accordingly. Let's go back to fill and maybe turn this down. I'm actually going to take this to 16. Oh no, I'm going to set it to 1. So this is how quickly you can generate drum pattern with it. Generator number 3 is called stages. And basically a stage can be seen as like a part of a clip. And so here we can set the number of stages first. So let's say we'll set 4. And right now, because the setting, they're all here down at the bottom, they will create just 1 note total. But if I take this up, actually, we're going to go to the next setting here to pitches, because that makes it easier to see. So here you can, first of all, set the bass note. So this is C3, C2. That actually works, so you can type it in and that saves you time. And so I can take this up or down, and you can see that the pitch changes. If you have scale mode on, then this will adhere to the scale that is set. And so, for example, I can just set things. Let's keep it like that. Take this up like this. Let's try this. So this is pretty fast right now, really short. As you could see that even though I had a clip that was a bar long, now it's just a quarter note long. Let's go back to stages. And now here you can set the amount of, or the length of the stage. So for example, we could set this to 4, this one to 2, another one to 4, and this to 2. You can also do other settings, or we could set this to this, so now we've got a bar long. This can be really helpful for bass lines. We can also use it for anything else as well. But I found that it's most useful for bass lines, especially initially when you're still kind of trying to wrap your head around what you will always get depending on the settings that you create. So you've got a velocity setting down here as well. So you've got ramp, so you can ramp it up. And you can see it goes per stage. And with this setting here, you can swap it around. So basically, starts the other way around. And then with random, you have basically random parameters for velocity for each note between those two settings for this range. And then you can just recalculate here. Right, so that's stages, pitches. You can have different amount of sliders. Right now, this is locked to the amount of stages, but you can unlock it as well. So I could unlock it and have different amounts of sliders. But you can see that this means also that that's the amount of pitches I get. So I'm going to keep it at that. And you could see that the maximum is the same as the maximum of the stages set. We're going to keep it at that. There's nothing new here already. We've got all of this. And then here the patterns, that has the same thing happening as well. So we've got 4 sliders right now because it's basically locked to the amount of stages, but you can also change that. And then here we can basically set rests or pauses. And so if we take the number up, and so yeah, you can play around with that. Not the greatest example of a bass line created. If you like these MIDI tools by Philip Meyer, there are actually paid ones as well. There's a huge pack that features 2 further MIDI generators and 8 MIDI transformers as well. I'm going to link that up top and also in the description below if you're interested. The first MIDI transformer is called Retrigger, and it allows you to have notes retriggered. You can find it in here. and the transformers, and then we can just play the clip that I prepared because we want to transform MIDI notes that exist already. Okay, so first up we can decide how many sliders we want. That's a bit like stages, so you can set the amount of sliders basically like for stages, but it doesn't generate MIDI notes. You can retrigger those. Or you can decide that this will be linked to the existing MIDI notes, and then you can decide the direction. So first the original MIDI notes and then the retriggers, or first the retriggers and then the note. So I'm gonna do the usual way, and you can see here I can create retriggers now individually. You can also do that together. It depends on what you're planning and also what your sound is. Then you can always decide on the interval as well for the retriggers. So we could set it to 30-second notes, for example. You can quantize them or not. And so if I did the direction here, you could see this is the note and the other one is beforehand. So these would not be heard right now. So let's go back to that. And then time is basically like what you already know from phase pattern. So you can bend the time. And you can see the original note also is changed this way or this way. So it's the curve is the same as well. You can make changes here as well. By the way, this sounds weird because of the preset settings, so that will not necessarily be the case. And then here you can reset it to linear. So if you don't want this, you can want to start from scratch. And you can introduce some randomness with jitter, as you already know. Then velocity, basically the exact same thing as in phase pattern. But here only set the range, and you can change the direction again as well. Okay, and last but not least, we've got the second transformation MIDI tool, which is Slice Shuffler. And I've already prepared a little MIDI clip. Let's have a quick listen. So what Slice Shuffler allows us to do is to basically create slices. So they're evenly spaced slices depending on the slice interval. And then we can basically move those slices around like the MIDI notes in those slices. And so by default it's set to a quarter note. I would prefer, to be honest, like to have the whole thing as like number of slices instead of the interval, because right now like the maximum of slices that you can get is 8, and I've got 4 bars, so technically it should be 16. So I would prefer that, but that's just one thing. So I can set it to different setting. Let's set it to 1, so we can get just 4 slices because it's easier to show this way. So forward is the default because that means nothing is changed in the order of the MIDI notes. Then we've got backwards. So this would be right now this part, right? So the first bar. And backwards, it just makes it play backwards. So I could just set this to backwards as well. Or I could say shuffle, which is completely random. You can, of course, do this with everything. I just don't want to change everything at once. And then you've got rotate 25%, rotate 55%, or rotate 75%. And they each basically shift the nodes within the slice either by 25%, 50%, or 75% to the right. So let's set this, for example. Let's take this. So if remember, it's like forwards, and if I set it to 25% right, you can see this one has been basically moved here, and then everything has been switched over because it, does it within the slice itself. Or you get half. You could do this here as well, and 75% mix. So that's it from me. I hope you found this helpful. If you did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you want to watch another video on MIDI tools that was used in Live 12.1, I'm going to link that here as well. Until then, bye!